Guys, this is the Ace Perspective, giving you my perspective on a recent Channel 4 program called The Talk that was aired yesterday. The program itself is about Black Brits and their children that were born in the UK, and when was it the right time to tell them that they will be treated differently because of the colour of their skin. It was an interesting program, even for the mere fact that it's my generation. I have a children or a daughter who's grown up now, mature, living her life, and at some point I've had to have a talk or a series of talks with her about her being black, because when you're young, there's no colour, but as you grow older, you start to realise that things are slightly different. So I'll give you my perspective at the end, but I think it's only fair that I explain some of the experiences that I've encountered, because lots of people I know, because of how I am, I don't really talk about it, and they assume that I've never experienced any racist incidents, and nothing could be further from the truth. There's too much to recount on this podcast, YouTube chat, but I'll give a few instances to give you some background story. But just from a personal point of view, growing up in the late 70s, 80s, I never had that talk with my parents. My parents was West Indian. They never really spoke about it. I learned about the differences from movies. I remember a movie called The Imitation of Life, a 1959 movie. And that was about a maid's daughter who was very fair-skinned, who pretended to be white because she was too embarrassed to be black. And I thought, oh, that's different. The next movie I remember clearly was the series called Roots. That was a series about slavery and about Kunta Kinte. I remember that program being aired in the late 70s and watching it in the evenings and going to school the next day riled up, looking for trouble as a youngster, thinking that all white people were plantation owners. But you're younger, you don't know any better. Clearly, when I was growing up, it never was really discussed. You can hear the adults talking about various miscarriages of justice at work and stuff like that, but they never really involved the youngsters. And we didn't have the internet. We didn't share information. So generally you just heard word of mouth about experiences that people suffered. The program itself was quite good. There were some bits in it that was funny. Some bits was, they can see it was quite emotional. And if you haven't watched it, I suggest just go in the iPlayer and watch it. And there was a few things that I thought, well, I don't know if I agree with that. Some of it was quite funny in the sense where it was not funny, and it didn't touch the heartstrings. But there's two sides to every story. Now I remember there's a part in the program, and they had the Sky newsreader. I think it was Gillian Joseph, and she talked about Kiss Chase. I remember Kiss Chase at school. It was a rage back then. There was nothing else to do, and the boys used to chase the girls, and when they used to catch them, they used to give them a kiss. And she talked about her school life, and then when she was at school, nobody wanted to chase her. Now, at the first sight, or the first thought was, oh, that's a shame. All the white kids didn't want to chase her. But then the other half of my brain kicked in, and I sort of brought myself back to school. And then they flashed up a picture of her in a school uniform, and then I thought to myself, well, I don't think I would have been chasing her if she was in my school. Now, don't get me wrong. Before you jump up and think, oh, that's heartless. It's not heartless. I mean, I'm no old painting now, and I wasn't back then. And I know that women or girls can be quite cruel. I remember the girls in my school. I mean, they ran really slowly when the good-looking boys were chasing, and when the not so good-looking boys like myself were chasing, they'd put spikes on, and they'd start warming up, and they'd run about 100 miles an hour. I mean, I think that's where I got my speed training from. Never caught anybody, but it was worth a try. So again, it does bring up it does conjure some memories of school. But going back to racist incidents, right? there's a few, and which I'll just speed through them because I don't want to spend all day to tell my life history. But there's a few of them that I remember just because it stood out, not just an everyday one. I remember clearly playing football. I remember it's a cup game and it's an away game, and I was playing football. And those days, whenever you was a black player, they just thought you had no brains, so they stick you out in the wing because you were fast. And any footballer of that generation would know exactly what I'm talking about. All the centre midfielders were white, all the central defenders were white, and the black players were stuck out on the wing for a bit of speed. And they'd just say run, give him the ball and let him run. So obviously I was playing in my traditional position on the right wing, and I think it was a cup quarterfinals, and I ran down the wing and I can hear somebody shout. I heard somebody shout, "You black, beep, 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 beep." And I thought to myself, because it's not like I haven't heard it before, but it sounded like, quite a soft voice. And as I ran back down the line, I looked and I saw a little kid, kind of being probably 8 years old, and he was waving his fist, and he was hurling racist abuse, and he was alongside his dad, and he was shouting abuse. And that was one of my first memories of an out-and-out racist. And I shrugged my shoulders and I thought, you little idiot. Because he didn't know any better. He was just following his dad. Now, this is why a lot of the time I say to youngsters, why would you get angry at some racists? Because they're idiots. If a 3-year-old shouted abuse at you, you'd think he doesn't know what he's talking about. So if his father shouted abuse, you think, well, he's just a big idiot. And that was my view even back then. So that was one of the experiences I had just at an early age. I think I must have been about, 15 at the time. But it was pretty bad. Growing up, I remember, you're a teenager, you go to house parties. I remember coming back from a house party, and in those days, house parties used to finish in the morning, like 5 o'clock in the morning. I was getting a train. I was walking, I think it was Thamesmead. I was walking the train station thinking, right, I'll get an early train. And as I was approaching the hill, a van drove past me. And it drove past me, I thought nothing of it. And then it circled around. And as it drove back, it was filled with skinheads carrying baseball bats. Now, obviously, the kiss chase training worked out well because I ran about 9.45 seconds, 200 meters. But I managed to escape. But again, that was scary. But, you put it down to, that's just the way of the land. I mean, I was around the days of skinheads, stickers, National Front. And when I tell youngsters now, they can't believe that Britain used to be like that. Now, obviously, getting older, I've now bought a car. And I'm thinking, right, it's safe now. I can get from A to B because I'm driving myself. And I remember just passed my test not too long ago. Went to the bank, got some money, filled up my car with petrol, and I was driving to work. And as I was coming for a roundabout, another car struck me head on, struck me, twisted my car around and came to a stop. Now, I got out of the car and I was a little bit dazed, and the driver of the van got out. Obviously, it's a work van. And he said to me, don't worry. We can exchange details tomorrow. I'll leave my number. Just as he said that, a police car pulled up behind me. Now, the policeman got out of the car. He walked over to the car and he said, what happened? And I said, this guy drove out across the lane, hit my car as I left the roundabout. The other police officer came out and I instantly remembered him. As I was driving, that police car was going in the opposite direction. As I was approaching the roundabout, what it did was it saw me and then it carried around the roundabout to follow me. Fortunate for me, it did, because they breathalyzed us both. I don't drink. And the other driver was drunk. So he got arrested. So that's one incident where it actually worked out well for me. Now, as I got older, obviously you find professions, you get more money, you buy better cars. A few years back, I was driving a Jeep and I was coming from work and I was stuck in traffic. As I was stuck in traffic, this is about 6 o'clock, a motorbike comes out from a side road, drives straight into my driver's door. The motorcyclist's head hits my window. He bounces off, the bike falls over. As I push my door open, he jumps up. He says, sorry, and he runs off. The motorbike is revving. We're talking rush hour traffic. About a minute later, a police car turns up with 2 police officers. And police officers, if anybody knows police officers, there's always a good cop, bad cop. Sometimes you have 2 bad ones. Well, they pulled over. I explained to them that, look, there's the bike. It's revving. I believe the bike to be stolen. This is the direction. I pointed the direction that the motorcyclist ran off in. And as I'm talking, the co-driver of the police car walks around my car. He opens the passenger door. He looks in. And then he leans over to me and he says, is this your car? And I say, why? Now, I won't repeat what I said after that, but unfortunately for him, he didn't know I was a solicitor. So he changed his approach after. But the fact that he saw this, he felt the need to ask the question. And if you don't understand, it's the way the question was asked, not the question itself. And that's how most covert racists get away with stuff. They'll ask the question and it's how they say it. Now, the last incident happened, and this is where my approach, I'm always of the school of hard knocks. As far as I'm concerned, sticks and stones will break bones, but words will never hurt you. That's how I grew up. You can say anything to me, it doesn't really matter. And I always used to say, and I'd advocate it, I'd prefer an open, an overt racist than a covert one. I'd prefer a racist that say what they are and act a certain way than somebody behind the scenes. Now, I went to a wedding in Poland. I won't say what area. It's a small town because they've got very good people, and I won't tar the town with an idiot. Now, the wedding was over a weekend, and me, the wife, and my son was there. I think he was 8 at the time. And they were getting on doing stuff, and I went for a walk around town, which is fine. I came back, and then we decided to go to the shops. I can't remember why, for whatever reason it was. So we went to the shops, and on the way back, there was a guy standing on a corner. And my wife said to me, something's wrong with that guy. The way he's looking at us, he looks a bit strange. Now, he was pacing up and down. He's muttering to himself. He was a skinhead of the old school variety. And then we realized that actually he was muttering things about the color of us. As we turned the corner, he started following us up and down. I shouldn't have, but I stepped over onto that side of the road just in case. And my wife and son carried on walking until we got back to the hotel. He branched off into a block of flats, I assume to get back up. I have no idea. But it sort of took me back. For me, it wasn't so bad, but for the wife, this actually shook her up to the extent where we had to get a cab, or she felt we had to get a cab from then on if we were going anywhere and not walk the streets. For the fact that my son was there was the only time I felt, maybe it's better if they're covert than out and out racist, because you forget what you can handle doesn't necessarily mean what the younger generation can handle. So those were some incidences of the racism I've experienced. But if you had a book, I could write down a lot more than that. Whether it's in the workplace, whether it's just on the street, whether it's a comment. I never take it personally because I just basically have this view that idiots will be idiots. So therefore, I'm not going to argue with an idiot. The comment I always remember people telling me, 2 half-wits don't make a whole one. And it's true. So, those are the instances that happened to me. So it's not like I'm not talking from personal experience. Now, the question was, well, when do you tell your children that they will be treated differently? Now, I've noticed by the program, it wasn't really decided. They all talked about, or at some point in the future, they're going to tell their child that, they have to act a certain way because they're black. I know as a black man that people look at black men differently. And I remember a colleague at work one day, just out of the blue, said to me, "Are black men particularly aggressive?" In an innocent way. Clearly, they had a conversation the night before about black men. Now, I congratulate them in asking that question because I think, well, that was very brave, because they were genuinely curious, because I can imagine that they'd never seen me upset. So they're thinking, well, is it true? So let me find out for myself. But often people don't have the courage to ask that question because they feel they can't. And then they take that gossip and then assume that that's what's happened. So, again, lots of stereotypes, different races have stereotypes. I think the only thing that the program kind of missed is that I know it's about black people on that occasion, but I think it's just about different people, different races in general. But I know it was about black people. Now, from my perspective, I don't think there is a cut-off point or a line that you draw that you'd say, I'm going to tell my child that they're going to be treated differently. I think if you look at it from a perspective that as they grow, you're always informing them that there are different races, different religions, different people, different, kinds of relationships. And then you just bring all that into it. So it's a continuous information, not just a point. You don't just say, well, oh, you're now 9, I'm going to tell you you're adopted. When it comes to the race, they would understand that where they are in society as a gradual basis. I don't like sometimes some of the way it's said because, I went to Poland, I experienced racism. By no means I consider Polish people racist. I'm sure they are, but they're racist English people. There are racist black people, to be quite honest. So again, I see people as people. And so I spoke to my daughter the day after the program, which was this morning. I'm losing the days here. And parts of it she agreed and parts of it she didn't. And it's one of those things where you say, well, has racism changed? And I've heard some people say, oh, it's still the same as it was before. Well, that can't be right, can it? I mean, think about it. They were hanging people in the 1700s. Slavery was in the early 1900s. Tiger Woods has a green jacket and Lewis Hamilton is driving, or the best driver ever, as far as I'm concerned. So racism has improved the way the treatment of black people. But, we hear about the famous black people and not the common man like myself. Obviously, I'm educated, but I wasn't born with a silver spoon. And I remember an interview, which I think sometimes we make a rod for our own back. I remember an interview by John Barnes, a footballer who played for Watford, and then ended up playing for Liverpool. I mean, I love John Barnes. I think he's a very talented player. And I remember him when Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister, and he was doing an interview, and he said, I'm going to vote conservative because I don't see colour. And I thought at the time, what an idiot. What do you mean you don't see colour? It's no coincidence that now John Barnes is probably the biggest advocate for black rights and, equality. I find that lots of famous people, when they're in the media eye and they're earning money, they try to play it down. I can understand why, because it's probably a little business. And when it doesn't work out for them, like when John Barnes couldn't get a job as a manager, he's now turned into a spokesperson because it affected him. And to be honest, he's very, very smart. He's very eloquent. I like what he says, but it would have been good if he said it at the height of his fame and not when he's retired. Lewis Hamilton is saying things at the height of his fame, which to me has more effect than what John Barnes is doing. Going back to, has racism changed? Yes, it has. Has it changed quickly enough? No, it hasn't. I don't think it will change in my lifetime and probably not my children's lifetime, because look how long it's taken us to get to where we are now. And just on the last point, I remember I've got to put this other racist incident in, is regarding my daughter when she was going to do her A-levels. And we took her to a college. I won't mention them at the college because, again, they've got good people there. And I wouldn't let one stupid teacher spoil the reputation. And she was looking for subjects to do as you do in A-levels. And we were walking into different classes. And obviously I'm a lawyer. She wanted to do law and psychology, a combined degree, very difficult. So we went into, so it was one of these open evenings. So we went into the classrooms, and we went into the law classroom. And as she's standing there, me wanting her to be an adult, I put her in front and say, well, look, you walk around, you ask the lecturer, the teacher, any questions you want to ask, because I don't want to spoon feed her. So she's walking around looking at the books, and the teacher came over to her and looked at her, and the teacher said to her, and I was standing not too far away, she said to her, the sports science is down the hall. Now, my daughter ignored her, and she carried on. 2 minutes later, she came back. The sports science is down the road. So my daughter ignored her again and carried on looking. And I thought, well, what's she going to do now? So I folded my arms and I thought, look, I'll give her one more chance. Lo and behold, another minute she came back. She said, sports science is down the hall. And at that point, my daughter says, Dad, these are the law books you got at home. And then it went quiet. Now, I only say that because when I was at school and the career teachers came round, they instantly looked at me and said, this is your chosen profession, mechanics or electronics. That was it. Now, this is the sort of stereotype you get. They look at you and they decide this is where you're going to be. They don't look at you and say, this is what you can do. Now, from the youngsters generation, I think that lots of parents, they project their insecurities on the children. Just like if you're scared of spiders, your child is likely to be scared of spiders. I keep these things from my children. I don't burden them with it. I let them know that nothing is unattainable. They'll always learn in the end that they're slightly different, but they'll still have that thought in their head, or that character that says anything is achievable. Everybody has to do hard work. Even if you're black, white, Asian, if you want to get ahead, you have to work harder than your next door neighbor. That is my perspective. So my perspective basically is there is no one cut-off point. 5 o'clock, I'm going to tell you about life as a black person. It is a continuous process. Again, there's films, there's books, there's internet. Children are not alone nowadays. As I said, in my day, you had nobody to talk to. You'd see something, a police officer did something bad. You didn't hear what's happening in Boston. You didn't hear what's happening in, Walthamstow, or what's happening up Kent. You just had to think, well, maybe it's just me. But nowadays, everybody knows their rights. Everybody knows the law. We have marches. And again, it's a minority. The racists are a minority. Unfortunately, some industries, they're pretty high up. So, that's my thought on that program itself. So there you have it. My perspective on the program, the talk on Channel 4. Please check it out. Very interesting. It's definitely an eye-opener. And until next time, if you don't know, you know now.